Trade Pros. Ferguson is proud to be a part of what you do. With over 1,000 one-stop shop U.S. counter locations, expert associates, and an unmatched selection of the go-to and hard-to-find OEM repair products you need. Visit Ferguson.com and find a counter location near you.
Everybody, another day, another head coaching change in Cleveland. Wendy Nix, Adam Schefter, Ryan Clark, and Tim Hasselbeck. The Cleveland Browns have fired head coach Hugh Jackson. The Browns are 2-5-1 this season, doubling their win total from its first two seasons with the team. Cleveland, though, 1-15 in Hugh Jackson's first year, 0-16 last season. In addition, the Browns have also fired their offensive coordinator, Todd Haley. He was in his first year with the team. Cleveland struggled immensely under Hugh Jackson, winning just 3 of its 40 games during his tenure. That's the worst win percentage for any team since the start of 2016. And some have regarded Jackson as an offensive guru, but the Browns have averaged the fewest points and posted the lowest QBR since 2016 and have had the worst turnover differential in that time. 3 wins, 36 losses, and 1 tie. That's the net result of Hugh Jackson's tenure as head coach. Greg Williams will serve as the team's interim head coach. Freddie Kitchens will now step in as the offensive coordinator since Todd Haley is also gone. And the Browns, Adam, will hold a news conference around 4:30 Eastern. But you, of course, the first to report this news.
Well, this is a situation where I think this had been percolating within the building. When John Dorsey took over, along with Alonzo Highsmith and Elliott Wolf in the front office, I think they were ready to make a coaching change at that point in time. But I think Jimmy and Dee Haslam, the Browns owners, wanted to keep Hugh Jackson on, give him a chance to work with the new front office, and they've worked together. And I think what happened was this team grew increasingly concerned about the development of Baker Mayfield. And this is a team that basically has regressed. They tied the Pittsburgh Steelers in the first game of the season and then lost at Pittsburgh in decided fashion yesterday. We are aware of some of the dysfunction that went on amongst the coaches themselves, where last week Hugh Jackson came out and said he wanted to take over some of the play calling responsibilities to backtrack. But once he had said it, it's clear what the dynamic was between he and Todd Haley, 2 very strong personalities who were depicted so well in Hard Knocks this summer, where people got an idea of that relationship. And so the Cleveland Browns decide to make this change. You bring up the record there, Wendy, of Hugh Jackson. Also on the road, 0-20. 0-20. How many head coaches would be allowed to coach when you're 0-20 before the Browns made the move that they did today? And once again, the Cleveland Browns are in a situation where they fired another head coach. They'll be paying his salary through the 2019 season. And the statistical oddity of the whole situation is Hugh Jackson is the 6th straight Browns head coach to be fired after the second game of the season against the Pittsburgh Steelers.
You played Pittsburgh a second time.
It's like LeBron leaving your team, man. You get fired.
Yeah, you don't want to play the Steelers when you're the Browns a second time because somebody's head rolls after that. Ryan, are you surprised at the timing of this decision at all?
You know what? I'm surprised it took this long. I'm not surprised that they fired him at this juncture of the season. I mean, you're seeing this team move backwards. This is a team that had some promise when Tyrod Taylor was the quarterback. Obviously, you get the infusion of the energy and the playmaking of Baker Mayfield. You expect this team to progress, and they just haven't. And then when you see the infighting between head coach and offensive coordinator, now it's ugly off of the field as well. And this was a move that was long overdue. Now John Dorsey and the Haslam family can move on and try to find their quarterback the head coach of the future, but also somebody that's going to tutor and bring Baker Mayfield along so he can be the franchise quarterback he was drafted to be.
That's all true. I don't know how this helps that situation one bit, though, to be totally honest with you. Think about the dysfunction we're talking about here. In all seriousness, think about this, okay? You fire your head coach and your offensive coordinator. I thought you were trying to make things better for your quarterback, okay? So you fire Todd Haley, who has been an offensive coordinator with a lot of success in this league for a number of years, okay? So you fire him. Freddie Kitchens takes over. Freddie Kitchens, to my knowledge, has never, ever, ever called plays in the National Football League. And oh, by the way, he worked for Todd Haley in Arizona. Like that. Right. So it's probably the only reason that Freddie is even in Cleveland. And then to kind of make it even more interesting, and look, I had played for him when he was a head coach, and I had been around him when he was a defense coordinator. I believe that Greg Williams is a very good coach. Greg Williams was out of football not long ago because of the whole bounty scandal in New Orleans. He is now the head coach that is stabilizing your situation. Think about how far we have come in this situation. I mean, I'm just being honest about what the situation is in Cleveland. If this is what the, stabilizing it looks like, think about how they must have felt like it was going.
It is the most Cleveland of all Cleveland things, with no disrespect to the Browns. I picked them to win 8/9 games. Anyway, Shefty, I do want to ask you this. Was there any, as you were monitoring this, any thought that Todd Haley would at least stay, that Hugh Jackson would go, but Todd Haley would make it through this?
Look, they obviously were uncomfortable with both men. And it turned out it was a very bad week to be a head coach in Cleveland, starting off with Ty Lue and now continuing with Hugh Jackson and Todd Haley.
Steelers, LeBron leaves. It's just a bad time.
It's not good.
And Tim is right. I think this team has a real chance to get worse this season before it gets better. Has a real chance to get worse. And they're going to have to survive this season. But here's the upside to it, Tim. While they now have a new coaching staff in place, a new head coach, a new offensive coordinator, and we'll see whether or not that has any impact, the Browns, once again, are first in the pool. They are the first team to be able to now go look and conduct a wide net for a wide coaching search to try to find the guy that they have failed to find over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And so now they can look in the college ranks and they can go look at Lincoln Riley, who doesn't seem interested in joining to the NFL right now, or they could look at any head coach who's been fired. They could talk to whoever they want. They are the first and only team to change head coaches.
Well, that's all well.
That's the upside, but
no,
they've done this before.
Let me ask you this. That's all well and good, but you said it yourself over and over and over and over and over again that you failed to find the right person. At what point is the process flawed? I mean, if they don't change the process by which they find these people, you'll have the same result.
Individuals in Cleveland.
Time, right.
Right, and you look at what John Dorsey and this staff and these execs were able to do with the draft. I believe they hit. I believe they hit with Baker Mayfield, Denzel Ward, who was a questionable pick. People thought that Bradley Chubb should have gone there. And then you even look to the Nick Chubb pick. I think all those things have worked very well for this group of people. But to Tim's point about the dysfunction that this shows as an organization, to now not have an offensive coordinator because you get rid of both of the guys who have called plays on that team. To have a situation, I differ in his opinion about Greg Williams because I work closely with him in Washington. I believe he's extremely intelligent. I believe he's a guy.
I think he's a great coach. I think he's a great coach.
Right.
But my point in saying that about Greg was a guy that people weren't sure was ever going to get back into the league. I think Greg is a great coach, but he now is a head coach. So in order to turn it over to Greg meant that you weren't turning it over to Al Saunders, that you weren't turning it over to Todd Haley. But listen, Greg, in my estimation, is as equipped as anybody there.
And that's what I think. I think when you look at his demeanor, what goes on in Cleveland is a place that lacks discipline, a place that lacks structure. And Greg Williams is a guy who likes to have those things. And I think that's why you go to him. The process now has to start in not only finding a coach for Cleveland, but convincing somebody that is going to be different. Convincing that making this move to Cleveland will help you as a coach, as a head coach. This will help you have a career that is successful. And they haven't been able to do that or lure anyone there who had the capabilities and the capacity to make that team a winning organization.
I would say this, and Ryan mentioned it, you think they got some of it right in terms of the players that they have. You look at them defensively. They are competitive defensively. They are not an easy weekend for offenses in the National Football League when you look at them on the defensive side of the ball. Offensively, and I definitely felt this way a couple weeks ago, they were not a team to me that was improving offensively this year.
I agree with
and
that.
I think that was probably frustrating to watch when your head coach is an offensive guy. You bring in a coordinator that was supposed to, help get that done. But clearly that, kind of interaction between Todd and Hugh Jackson wasn't working.
Hey, let me say this, that Cleveland's hope is in its front office. And these guys, I think, have done, as you pointed out, a great job drafting. But they now have to overcome the mistakes of ownership. They have to overcome the mistakes that this franchise has made through time in all the head coaching changes. And so even though these are new, bright personnel people who have brought in excellent talent, they're surrounded by so many inept moves over time the lack of faith and confidence that this organization is going to get it right. So they are trying to overcome the exact culture that they were brought in to change.
That was my point in saying you have to lure a coach there. Like, you got to prove you're going to have to sit somebody down who has been successful, somebody that understands how to build a team, and convince them that Cleveland is the place.
And say we're changing.
Absolutely, that it won't be the same.
Yeah, and that's why the type of person you have to hire somebody that you identify as a culture changer. If you think about, Tom Coughlin was hired at the Giants. To change your culture. He went in and told Michael Strahan and other people that 11 o'clock meant 10:55, and he never wavered on it. Like, that's not easy to do at a place, but you have to come into the building with some type of credibility, and you also have to come into the building with the ability to just kind of, draw the line and say no one's crossing that line, and that's how we're going to do it. They need to find somebody to change the culture there. And to be honest with you, Greg Williams is actually the kind of person that can kind of help that happen.
And I think that's the hard part moving forward, right? You get a guy like Greg, and you spoke about him being out of the league. A dude like a coach like Greg Williams is excited that he gets to sit in that seat again. The hard part, you mentioned Tom Coughlin. Tom Coughlin was very successful in Jacksonville. Mm-hmm. Tom Coughlin was established as a head coach. So for him, it was good to go to New York. Yeah. You have a great organization. You have a historic organization. You have great leadership and ownership. But in Cleveland, you can't present that package.
On any of that.
So how are you going to get a Tom Coughlin-like culture changer to decide that he wants to be the coach there?
You write a very big check.
I'll tell you how you get him. You got Baker Mayfield. And so there's got to be a coach out there who views Baker Mayfield as the piece that attracts him there. And so many times you see coaches who are drawn to organizations by ownership or by a certain city. In this particular case, you hope that the quarterback you selected, when you bypass the right to draft Carson Wentz or Patrick Mahomes or Deshaun Watson, you hope that Baker Mayfield is good enough that a coach wants to go work with him.
Yeah, you're hoping that. But the interesting, I'm not sure, you're not going to get a unanimous feeling on that.
Right.
No, so I think you have to find the one. Well, all of this, I'm sure, will be discussed at 4:30 Eastern. Again, the Browns will hold a press conference, having parted ways with both their head coach and their offensive coordinator. We'll continue to follow that, but it's one of those days. It's a Monday. Dirk Cutter, some more breaking news, has announced that Ryan Fitzpatrick will now start. He will step in as the starting quarterback against the Carolina Panthers. Here we go again and again and again.
This one was obvious. As somebody this morning said to me, there was no way the Buccaneers could go back to Jameis Winston to start Sunday's game against the Carolina Panthers. When he played the way he did yesterday, throwing the 4 picks that he did, and the team responded to Fitzmagic the way it did, where it came to life. There was a certain energy and enthusiasm that the team didn't have early in the game. That doesn't mean that Ryan Fitzpatrick isn't going to go out and throw 6 picks on Sunday. He might. That might happen with him.
It very well might.
You should have saw Tim. They could have seen Tim's face just now. Tim was like, yeah.
But they'll be highlight-worthy picks.
But it's true. He might go out and throw 6 picks.
And so then what do you do?
But you can't argue the way the team responded, I don't think, Tim. I mean, this team
responded at the beginning of the year. They had one bad game against the Bears, and you decided to change him.
Oh, right. Yeah. So you're saying you should have stayed that way the whole time.
Well, the thing is, Ryan Fitz.
What are we doing?
I got you.
You know what I mean? Each and every week, you throw a couple picks.
So what are we doing?
The next guy.
I don't think anyone knows.
Well, I think here's the interesting thing to me to this news, is it makes me think that at least Dirk Cutter is making the decision of who starts.
I agree with that.
Because
he has to.
Well,
sometimes the organization could say, you know what, we need to see him.
You don't think that happens?
I'm sure it does happen.
But what I'm saying is this is Dirk's decision. So I think that Ryan Fitzpatrick being named the starter is Dirk's decision, because really what he's trying to do is save his job. Mm-hmm. He's already fired his defensive coordinator, was already on the hot seat before the season started, and so he needs to win as many games as possible to remain the head coach. Listen, were the Bucs interested in John Gruden? Of course they were. And so that job was available before. So the only way Dirk Cutter keeps that job is if he wins. Well, in his estimation, if winning means starting Ryan Fitzpatrick, that's the only way you're going. Jason Licht doesn't want to continue playing Ryan Fitzpatrick. It doesn't make sense. The Glazer family doesn't want to continue playing Ryan Fitzpatrick. They need to figure out if Jameis Winston can be their starting quarterback. So what this says to me is it's Dirk's decision, but he's coaching for his job.
I think all of this has been Dirk's decision, and I think this one is the right decision for him. And I believe we said it earlier talking on this show when Jameis Winston was coming back that what is in the best interest of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the organization could be in direct opposition in what's best in the best interest of Dirk Koetter. And that's what we're seeing now. Obviously, if you're a part of the organization, if you're the Glazer family, if you're Jason, you want to see Jameis Winston. You want to be able to make a decision and evaluate if he is your quarterback of the future. But with the way he's played and with the off the field problems, like for me, Jameis Winston to be my franchise quarterback has to be a no-brainer. Right? It can't be a situation where I feel like you can at some point play bad enough that I want Ryan Fitzpatrick to be my quarterback because there are questionable things off the field. He's not necessarily the leader or the face of a franchise that you want. So in order to keep that guy on the field, in order to sign that guy to a long-term deal, his on-the-field production has to be off the charts. And it just hasn't been. It's been downright terrible to lead the league in picks after being suspended, not available for the first 4 games. That's unacceptable from your quarterback. And the hard part is Fitzpatrick always responds in that type of situation, though. In the nothing to lose.
It's mind-boggling, really.
In the nothing to lose. I can just get up here and chunk it and throw balls.
No pressure, no expectations.
That's what he does.
But then we see
so what happens now
as the starter.
Wait, so I forget about this Sunday against Carolina, okay? Because this team is reeling, and it's probably not going to make the playoffs. I don't mean to discount them if they can prove me wrong.
You can discount whoever you want.
But the more interesting discussion now is what does this team do long-term,
absolutely,
in the future? Do they cut Jameis after the season? They picked up the 5th-year option. Do they not play him the rest of the year at the risk of him getting hurt and them owing him $20.9 million? Do they walk away from him after this year? And if they do, who's the quarterback you're turning to? Because Ryan Fitzpatrick has proven he's a great bridge quarterback. That's what he is. I don't think he's a guy that you're building this franchise around for the next 5 to 10 years. So where are the Buccaneers today now that they used their first overall pick on this guy and they've just benched him for Ryan Fitzpatrick?
Listen, to say that, I don't know that there's anybody that hasn't been underwhelmed by Jameis Winston as a starting quarterback. But here's the deal. You referenced the 5th-year option. So for about $20 million, he's the starting quarterback for the 2019 season. He's 24 years old right now.
Yeah.
Okay? Ryan Fitzpatrick is not going to be the guy for the future. You already picked up that option. It's essentially what Jacksonville went through. The Tennessee Titans are going to end up, kind of being in a similar situation with Marcus Mariota, depending on how their situation turns out. It's one of the reasons you have the 5th-year option, is to give yourself more time to figure out if the guy can play. It's been terrible. It's been absolutely, his turnover numbers are disgusting. But the reality is he's a young player that has a lot of talent. It's why Eric Flowers gets cut by the Giants and a few weeks later picked up right away. It's because most guys don't look like Eric Flowers and have that type of athletic ability. And there are coaches that believe they can get him to be a better tackle or a better guard. Well, there are going to be coaches that feel like, listen, this guy who won a national championship in college, who has a rare gift to throw the football, that we can make him a better quarterback. That's just the reality of it. So, I think this idea that, Jamie, who's the option? Don't tell me Teddy Bridgewater, because there's 5 other teams that are going to say the same thing.
Right, and I just think with the Jameis situation now, you can't back and forth it if you're Dirk Koetter.
Surely this has to be. Yeah,
but I'm saying.
You can only think
just
forward. You can't do it again.
Right, just for the Jameis proponent of it and that piece of it, moving him back in and back out, not necessarily for the position, because it's like you said, somebody's going to want Jameis Winston. And I think Tampa Bay, if you get a new coach, I don't know if Dirk Koetter does start to win games with Ryan Fitzpatrick, if he's still the coach even then. Because moving forward, you feel like you can't have Ryan Fitzpatrick as your quarterback. And I believe Dirk Koetter will be tied to that. So they'll have to get a new guy anyway. So for him, it's to show that you can win games, show that you can have a team be successful and get a different job. I think this move effectively puts Dirk Koetter out of Tampa Bay.
Well, and either way, he's got to sink or swim, I think, at this point with Ryan Fitzpatrick, and it may very well be sink, but that's where they are.
It's going to be fun, though.
It's good. It will be something to watch.
Trade Pros. Ferguson is proud to be a part of what you do. With over 1,000 one-stop shop U.S. counter locations, expert associates, and an unmatched selection of the go-to and hard-to-find OEM repair products you need. Visit Ferguson.com and find a counter location near you.
Tom Brady has done all right for himself as an NFL quarterback. He's got those 5 Super Bowl rings, 4 Super Bowl MVPs. He's been an MVP in the regular season 3 times. And then how about this? His success against the Bills, a 28-3 record in his 31 starts against them. So enter tonight's game in Buffalo. Lisa Salters joins us now in New England. Lisa, trying to open up a 2-game lead in the AFC East tonight, but they do have some concerns at some key offensive positions, namely tight end and running back. What can you tell us?
Yeah, Wendy. Well, rookie running back Sony Michel was downgraded to out earlier today with a knee injury, so the Patriots could be down to 2 healthy running backs in James White and the recently signed Kenyon Barner. But Rob Gronkowski made the trip here to Buffalo, so that's encouraging for New England after he did not travel last week to Chicago because of back spasms. He's listed as questionable for tonight, but the hope is that he will be able to play. Remember, Gronkowski grew up about 15 miles away from here in a town called Williamsville, New York, and he has said that he has a little bit of added motivation every time he plays the Bills because they passed on the hometown kid not once, but twice in the 2010 draft. Since then, Gronkowski has played in 13 games against the Bills and has 12 touchdowns. So I think if there's any way he can play tonight, Wendy, he is going to be out here.
Yeah, it seems we're going to call that a miss by Buffalo, Lisa. Needless to say, there will be plenty of happy teams in the AFC East when Tom Brady retires. But I have to ask you, after talking about his record against them, will any team be happier than the Buffalo Bills?
Probably not. This stadium has been around for 46 seasons, Wendy, and Tom Brady is the 4th winningest quarterback ever to play here, and that includes all of the Bills' quarterbacks over the last 4.5 decades. Brady is 14-2 here. 14-2 in this building. That's half of the ridiculous 28-3 overall record against Buffalo that you mentioned earlier. That's the most any quarterback has ever beaten any other team. Now, I asked Brady last night if he was aware of those ridiculous numbers that he has against the Bills, nearly 7,800 passing yards, 68 touchdowns, both the most he has against any team. And he said, yes, he's aware of the success he's had, but he really tried to downplay the importance of that tonight. He said, yeah, we've won a lot, but it's always been a tough game. It's going to be a rowdy environment, Brady said. We're going to have to play well. Again, I think he was just being nice because he also said, despite averaging 39 points the last 4 games, Wendy, he thinks his offense is only scratching the surface of what it can be. And he said he hopes that they're able to put up 50 on Buffalo tonight.
Just what the Bills and that rowdy environment wants to hear. Listen, they very well might. Obviously, this record for Tom Brady and the Bills notable. But I do want to ask you about LaShawn McCoy because we are now about 24 hours from the trade deadline.
Well, he's been officially cleared from concussion protocol. He's expected to play tonight. And other teams have called the Buffalo Bills, and the Bills have listened. The problem is the Bills still view him as one of their best, if not their best player. He's got another year left in his contract. So if you're the Buffalo Bills, do you want to go trade LaShawn McCoy when he could be a guy who helps Josh Allen next year as well? So unless some team parts with what the Bills believe is a good pick, they're not going to trade him. And there's not been a team yet to step up to pay what the Bills are asking. And so right now, barring something changing, it looks unlikely that LaShawn McCoy is going to be dealt.
Well, again, 4 o'clock Eastern, that's the end of the league, the business day tomorrow. We'll be here all day on NFL Live watching who's going where and for how much. Our top story this afternoon, Cleveland has fired head coach Hugh Jackson. He won only 3 of 40 games during his tenure as the Browns head coach. That wasn't the only change, though. Cleveland also parted ways with offensive coordinator Todd Haley. He was in his first year in that role with the team. Here's a statement from Browns owners Dee and Jimmy Haslam. We greatly appreciate Hugh's commitment to the Cleveland Browns over the last 2.5 years. We understand how critical this time period is in the development of our football team individually and collectively, and believed it was in the organization's best interest to make the move at this time in order to maximize our opportunities the rest of the season. The Browns will hold a press conference at 4:30 Eastern. But right now, it's Overreaction Monday, so I'll say this. Cleveland should have made this decision after last season. Is this an overreaction?
Listen, this is not an overreaction for me because you moved on. You got a new GM in John Dorsey. You went and found your quarterback of the future. This tenure should have started new all the way around. You should have got a guy that you felt was there to lead Baker Mayfield. Found somebody who had a different view, a different structure to try to help this team be better. And when you stick with the old thing, when in 2 years you only win one game, when it's 1-15, when your last quarterback to win a game is RG3, then you go 0-16 the next year. Coaches don't survive that. Coaches don't get talked up to the new GM and made to stay. And so for me, this is a decision that has set the Cleveland Browns back yet again and just showed the ineptitude of this organization that we have seen year after year after year. This is another example of it.
Not an overreaction for me. I agree with you, Ryan. And I think the other aspect of it is that when you have the new GM and you have the quarterback, don't waste a year. Yep. I mean, I don't know what else to say other than that. Like, we're talking about Jameis Winston trying to figure out, like, hey, was that fifth-year option the right thing? Like, that jumps on you quickly in the NFL when you're trying to figure out if your quarterback can play or not. Don't waste a year, which is what it feels like they've already done, in terms of what this year has meant for, Baker Mayfield. We're at the halfway point, and the head coach and the offensive coordinator are now gone.
Yeah, and if you make this decision after 8 games, and it's not that anybody, I think, disagrees with it, how close were you after last?
And by the way,
at least as short as it was.
You've won way more games than you won.
Right, and you still make this choice. Adam, overreaction for you?
Not an overreaction. This is why they're in the spot they're in, because the new front office wanted to bring on a new coaching staff. Ownership stepped in the way, and so you mixed and matched a couple that wasn't going to get along, that was going to go to divorce court at some point in time, and it just happened to be today on October 29th. Right. And they've been building and building and building, and we finally find them in that spot today. But the fact of the matter is this is something that was a long time coming. Everybody was not on the same page. Now hopefully they can be, but it's just not exactly the way you'd want to start out.
The thing that's crazy about what Tim just said, I didn't even think about wasting that year. You look at Baker Mayfield, and the first question you ask is he a better quarterback now than he was the first time I saw him in a Cleveland Browns uniform? And that answer is no, and that's a bad deal.
Well, and there's just no indication that will change going forward in these final 8 games. I mean, it's a lot easier to make this change when you're not in the middle of a season, even if it is a lost season, so to speak.
Yeah, now that I think about it, too, you just think about it, it's like, okay, Josh Rosen's lost his offensive coordinator. Baker Mayfield's, lost his offensive coordinator and head coach. I think at some point, too, you just have to look at, the trends around the league and figure out what's happening. What are we doing to these young quarterbacks if we think they're going to get better in that type of environment?
Louis Riddick is yelling at the television right now. Yes, it's about development, and he's not wrong. Let's look at some of the other storylines from Week 8. We've got one more game to go tonight, of course, in Buffalo, but here's where we are. The Rams were tested by the Packers. Sean McVay took care of business, though. He improves to 8-0. They're off to their best start since 1969. There he is, Patrick Mahomes, 4 touchdowns for the 3rd straight game, becoming the 4th quarterback in NFL history to do that, alongside Marino in 84, Peyton Manning, Drew Brees. Adam Thielen stays red hot. His 8th straight 100-yard receiving game, matching Calvin Johnson for the longest streak all time, but not enough as the Saints win their 6th straight game. How about Adrian Peterson beating Father Time, 149 yards against the Giants. He's 33, capped it with an incredible 64-yard touchdown run in the 4th quarter. And then the aforementioned Jameis Winston, who still struggles. Fitzmagic almost rallied the Bucs from a huge deficit, but Cincinnati won on a late field goal. Here's Jameis Winston on his benching.
I'm definitely the reason why we came up short with this game, and I own that. I just can't play like that, having balls all over the place, not giving our team a chance to win. It was very humbling, but it's not about me. It's my fault that we were in that position. He had to make a decision, and Fitz came in there and fought his tail off. Our offense responded greatly. Every time I go out there, I feel like I get a team the best chance to win, but I have to back that up. I know who I am. I know who I am as a player. I just have to execute.
Today's not the day I have to decide that, right? I mean, I don't have any problem making decisions, and I'll make it when it's time's right, but now's probably not the right time to make it.
Well, that was yesterday, and perhaps it was not the right time, but we've since had a decision. His 4th game with at least 4 turnovers, Jameis Winston, that is. That's 2 more than any other player has since 2015. Keep in mind, A lot of his bad interceptions have come when he isn't even under duress. Of his career 54 picks since 2015, 42 have come when he's not under duress. That also leads the NFL during that span, and it is not the record he was gunning for. Dirk Koetter did make the announcement just a little while ago that Ryan Fitzpatrick will move in and serve as the team's starting quarterback against the Carolina Panthers. So here we are. Here we go again. Overreaction Monday then. This is not for this week. This is for the sum total. The Bucs need to move on from Jameis Winston. Tim.
It's an overreaction for me. He's 24 years old. They picked up the fifth-year option, as Adam noted earlier in the show. Here's the reality of it. I remember watching him in college and writing down in my notes of him saying, look, I would rather have this guy be my quarterback when I'm behind than when I'm ahead. It's because I always felt like he was kind of reckless with the football. Mm-hmm. Here's the deal. Dirk Koetter's been with him his entire NFL career. He got drafted number 1 overall because of the traits that he showed as a player. It's your job as a coach to coach him out of the bad stuff. Right. And so I think you're still married at the hip with him. It's your job to get it figured out and get him to eliminate those bad decisions when you're not under pressure.
Yeah, and this is an overreaction for me for many of the reasons we talked about earlier, about the organization, about knowing who's going to be the next quarterback. They don't just grow on trees. You don't just find these guys year in and year out. They don't have this level of talent. And I understand what Dirk Koetter is doing right now because he has been outplayed by Fitzpatrick. He has been the reason that they've lost some of these games since he's been back. He said it himself after the Cincinnati game. But even with that, you don't just give up on this talent because you don't know what's next. You don't know what's behind the next door. And it's hard to say that this is an overreaction after you just showed a stat that puts him behind 2 quarterbacks that at least me, myself, absolutely crush every week because of their ineptitude, because of the fact that they don't complete passes, that they turn the ball over. But Jameis Winston has to find a way to be better. But I am in 100% agreement with Tim. He has the traits. He has the skill set. You have to keep him away from the bad things.
Which so far has, let's face it, not been the case at all. Is this an overreaction for you?
I think it's an overreaction. Again, it's like anytime you want to fire a coach or move on from a quarterback, who are you moving on to? And Ryan Fitzpatrick is a great bridge quarterback right now, but it leaves the Buccaneers in no man's land as to what their long-term plan will be. I think Jameis, again, was the number 1 overall pick for a reason. This organization believed in him. Maybe, again, it's just growing pains and it's time to get it out of him. I understand he's been a turnover machine and his decisions on the field and off the field have to be much better than they've been. But to move on from him without having a suitable long-term alternative, for me, makes this an overreaction.
Well, it's one of those days. Some additional coaching changes. This out of Dallas.
Well, the Dallas Cowboys basically have made a change along their offensive line, and you see the information. They have parted ways with offensive line coach Paul Alexander. They've promoted Mark Colombo. And I think what's most interesting is that they brought back Hudson Houck, who was their longtime offensive line coach, to assist the offensive line and the offense in general. When you're going back, reaching back into the past like that, to bring back a famed coach who meant so much to that organization, that's a good thing. But it also tells you that they're not really all that comfortable with the way things have been handled so far.
Well, absolutely. And if you watch this team and Ezekiel Elliott run the ball, if you were able to see the Washington Redskins change the line of scrimmage each and every play, keep Ezekiel Elliott to under 40 yards, you know something had to change. We always talked about how great this offensive line was and that it was the catalyst to this team, not only this offense, and they haven't played that way this year.
When you think about it, what they're doing, you know, Adam brings up Hudson Houck, bringing him back. Mark Colombo played there and was a very good player there for the Cowboys as an offensive tackle. And so I think part of what they're trying to do is get back to probably how they used to do it, and which is, in the past is what led to them being more successful team running the football.
Well, it's been a busy bye week in Dallas. There was the Amari Cooper trade. Now this change.
Coopy trade.
Coopy. That's what all the kids are calling it these days. Yep. I'm just the first. So anyway,
it's not a Coopy trade.
more changes continue. With Le'Veon Bell still absent in Pittsburgh, James Conner just continues to put in the work. 212 scrimmage yards, and he found the back of the end zone twice in Sunday's win over the Browns. Conner's 922 scrimmage yards, the 4th most in the NFL this season. He continues to put up solid numbers among some Steelers all-time greats. Connor's 9 rushing touchdowns, tied for the most through 7 games in Steelers history with Hall of Famer Franco Harris in 1976. Connor, also the first player in Steelers history to rush for multiple touchdowns in 3 straight games. Watching it all has been Jeremy Fowler, who joins us now from Pittsburgh. But Jeremy, with the trade deadline approaching, we have to ask simply the timeline for Le'Veon Bell's eventual return.
Well, Wendy, it's day 57 of Bell Watch, but who's counting, right? So at this point, Bell is expected to let that trade deadline tomorrow pass. So that would give him exactly 2 weeks from 4 p.m. tomorrow till November 13th to show up. That 13th is the deadline for him to play at all this season. Bell has told me he wants to play. That much is a certainty. The exact date of reporting is still uncertain. I've spoken to people close to Bell, and they still have Week 11 on the table. And so it's been hard to pinpoint. However, the Steelers are very happy with what they're seeing from James Conner. This is a wild stat right here. 922 scrimmage yards, second most in franchise history through 7 games. Bell, of course, had 938 yards in 2014. And guard Ramon Foster told me the passion that Conner plays with is out of this world.
Well, Jeremy, 2 things are true. Good for Connor, and hopefully you're comfortable where you are, because this thing just continues to keep on keeping on. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you. Adam Schefter joining us now in our Domino's pregame HQ. And now, Adam, as we know, we're 1 day away from the NFL trade deadline. How does that affect Le'Veon Bell?
Well, essentially, there are people around the league who believe that Le'Veon Bell does not want to be traded, and that part of his strategy here is to stay away until after the trade deadline, because he cannot be traded unless that franchise tender is signed. And he has not signed that franchise tender, therefore he can't be traded, and he's probably, the expectation being, not going to report until after the NFL trade deadline, which would mean the Pittsburgh Steelers could not trade him by the 4 p.m. Eastern deadline tomorrow. Of course, there are a whole set of other complications. James Conner has emerged and become a frontline back, a Pro Bowl running back this season. He has helped replace Le'Veon Bell in that offense for the time being. Le'Veon Bell still has not shown up, and it's Monday afternoon on October 29th. Le'Veon Bell is not at the Steelers training facility. There's no sign of him there today. They don't know when he'll be back, but I think most people believe that it'll be after the trade deadline so that he cannot be dealt away from Pittsburgh.
Well, this got messy, to say the least. The Raiders, meanwhile, have told Derek Carr he is their quarterback now, but also for the foreseeable future. This, according to you, Adam, this backs up what John Gruden has said, that the team has no plans to trade the 3-time Pro Bowler, but we've seen things change before. Having said that, Adam, what is the latest on potential players who are on the trading block leading into tomorrow?
Well, we've got a whole host of them, Wendy, right now. I think that the team to watch is the New York Giants, and the player to watch is, or the position to watch is wide receiver. So if you want to talk Giants players right now, basically you've got Landon Collins, you've got Janoris Jenkins, you've got Olivier Vernon. The Giants already have shown that they're willing to trade anybody at this point in time. And so we've got a situation here where Landon Collins has been the subject of trade talk, and Janoris Jenkins has been the subject of trade talk, and we've got a whole host of Giants right now. Now, the position to watch, I think, is wide receiver, because Demaryius Thomas has come up in trade talks, and the Broncos have been listening to teams call in to see whether or not they would be interested in trading for him. And I think there's a situation where most people believe, with Demaryius Thomas' salary being what it is next year, that he wouldn't be back in Denver. So the Broncos might as well get back a draft pick for him now, being that they likely would have to release him after the year anyway, and they've got these young wide receivers waiting in the wings. As for the 49ers and Pierre Garçon, situation where they also are listening, the 49ers confirm there have been trade talks involving Pierre Garçon, who is a leader, who is a productive player, who is a tough guy to get things done on the football field. Hasn't been healthy, but I think the 49ers obviously looking to see if there'll be a trade partner by tomorrow's 4 o'clock Eastern deadline. So Garçon, Thomas at the wide receiver position. The Giants is the team to watch, wide receiver the position to watch, and we shall see what comes down by the 4 o'clock Eastern trade deadline tomorrow.
Just a little over 24 hours from now. Adam, thank you.
As a young boy, Gavin loved playing football. He lived and breathed it, wanted to go pro. Why, he'd spend hours upon hours just practicing his touchdown dances. And one day, while getting fitted for bifocals, He realized he was never much good at throwing, or running, or catching, or even kicking. Yeah, Gavin's chances of playing pro football were looking like 4th and long. Very long. But he did hear how Geico could save him money on car insurance, so he switched and saved. Then he did kind of a touchdown dance. At least he was still good at that.
Our Week 8 Monday night matchup, Tom Brady and the Patriots in Buffalo to face the Bills. It's chilly, 8:15 Eastern, 5:15 Pacific on ESPN. Our coverage begins with Monday Night Countdown at 6 o'clock. Adrian Peterson is defying Father Time. He's 33 years old and putting together a solid season. He's rushed for 587 yards so far, the only player 33 or older to rush for more through the first 7 games. Hall of Famer John Riggins, that was in 1983 and 1984, also with the Washington Redskins, as we say hello from the film room, brought to you by Verizon. And Ryan, the Redskins off to a pretty solid start, and in no small part due to Adrian Peterson. What are you seeing?
Well, one is that Adrian Peterson was so talented, right? When I saw him play at Oklahoma as a freshman, I was like, man, this is the first dude I've ever looked at and thought, he needs to be in the league right now. And so even though he's not what he once was, he can still go. He's still a lot better than some of these younger backs. And he doesn't have the breakaway speed that he used to, but you saw him have a touchdown in a 4-minute type of offense where he outran the whole New York Giants secondary. And so Adrian Peterson is hitting the holes that are available. This line is doing a great job of giving him space, and he's getting the yards that are there. Adrian Peterson isn't trying to do too much. He's not trying to create on his own. He's following his blocks. He's following his line and doing what he has to do to make plays and not do the extra. I love what Adrian Peterson
It's fun to watch, really.
I mean, it's really remarkable. This doesn't normally work, right? Like old running backs in the situation, like it doesn't typically work where a guy can play at a high level. Remember, he was signed off the street in training camp only because they had an injury at the position. Like, that's how he had, and there was no guarantee. He actually played in the preseason. Right. I don't ever remember him playing in the preseason.
He always said he wanted those carries, though.
To prove that he actually was going to make the team, and he honestly has been the brightest spot for this Redskins team so far this season.
Look, and honestly, you never know, but it's showing no sign of slowing down the way it stands right now through the halfway mark. Also through the halfway mark, the Carolina Panthers have played pretty well. We haven't talked a ton about what's happening there, but we did talk a lot leading into the season about Norv Turner and how he would help Cam Newton. It would appear that's been the case.
I think it definitely has been the case. You go back to last week, the offense was struggling. Norv Turner jumpstarts them with a trick play. The other thing that Norv has done is he's basically said, look, I have a quarterback that is unlike any other athlete that's ever played the position before, and he wants to run the football. He feels like it's part of his game, and so you know what? I'm going to let him do that, and I'm also going to design some stuff to go along with it. I'm going to try to fit some of our passing game stuff into some of these unique runs that you're able to do with a guy that honestly looks like a defensive end but is playing quarterback. So I think that what Norv Turner has done is he's approached this probably differently than he has coaching other quarterbacks that he's had in the past, because what they're doing is different than anything he's done in the past, and I think it's helped Cam quite a bit.
And watching Norv Turner work with this offense, even young guys like DJ Moore, Samuels, he's putting those guys in position. They're running triple options and doing things you can't do with other quarterbacks. This is like a souped-up college offense because they have all of these great college-like pieces. And so when you watch Cam Newton, it seems to be like he's having fun. And we all know when he's smiling, when he's enjoying himself, when he's engaged in that way, that's when he's at his best. And Norv Turner has done that.
And, the better coaches play to their players' strengths. They take what they can do and they work with it. You mold it a bit, but not a whole lot. If it's not broken, don't fix it. Our top stories this afternoon: Cleveland has fired head coach Hugh Jackson. He won just 3 of 40 games during his tenure as the Browns head coach. And that wasn't the only change they made. The Browns also parted ways with offensive coordinator Todd Haley. He was in just his first year in that role with the team. See you there, boom. Each week, NFL teams select a high school football coach of the week. ESPN will honor the Monday Night Football home teams coach. Coach Dean Santorio from Grand Island High School is this week's honoree. The Don Shula High School Coach of the Year award will be announced at the Pro Bowl in January. We do it every week, and for good reason. In case you missed it, it's our Sunday standouts. Are we ready?
Yes, we are.
There are going to be people from Kansas City on here, I'm thinking.
I probably, maybe even,
I can think of one play.
even a quarterback, for sure. There may be even this guy, Odell Beckham Jr. I mean, stop me if you've heard this before, but he can make some catches. 3rd and 17, he's being held. Does it matter? No.
Well, we know he doesn't need both hands anyway. He even manages to get his right hand on this ball. The crazy part, this dude was like 15 yards off of him when he started running this go ball.
Here we go, 4th and 12.
Yeah.
Well, he just takes that one out of space, it seems.
It would have been great if he could have stayed on his feet and scored.
Yeah, you know what, though? Like,
you're expecting too much out of him.
Yeah, I know. So,
do it
Take
all.
what we can get, Christian McCaffrey. Keep your eye on the ball. Cam Newton throws it. Deflected. Christian McCaffrey saves the day and catches it for the score.
He dunked on this dude's head, though. Like, this is like LeBron James, Kevin Durant, Giannis type stuff right here. You got to go up and get that. You can't let the short running back
mix.
get it.
I like it. How about Kareem Hunt jumping all over people yesterday, speaking of the aforementioned Kansas City, 4th and 1.
and then
like
the
he's running
strength
hurdle.
to push him into the end zone, too, after you jump. That's incredible.
Yeah, this is kind of embarrassing, guys.
Wow.
Oh, where'd it go?
There we go.
Hurdle.
There's one.
It's like very Geldieverish.
You're gonna get caught one of these times, though.
The best bobble. The football bounces off an arm here, off the and a helmet for Todd Gurley, but he's able to reel it in. The nice catch down the sideline.
They seem like they're using him more as a receiver a little bit. You think about just yesterday alone, I mean,
he's a great receiver.
The difficulty and the concentration it takes to come down with that is amazing.
David Moore, the Seahawks, catches the rebound off the bobble as well. This one for the score.
Didn't it seem like yesterday in this game more people got like Jimbo'd and caught bobbles in the red zone than usually happens in one game?
They say catch
Guess
the
what?
first time.
Abracadabra. Guess who's back? Ryan Fitzpatrick, a 2-point attempt here. Fitzpatrick, the nice move, avoids the defender. Chris Godwin, score.
The best part about this is that it's at his belt buckle. When you move, I'm being dead serious. When you move in the pocket like this, it's so easy to have the ball take off on you, be outside the frame of the wide receiver. But because it's in there like that, you're just able to curl up in the end zone. That's awesome right there. That's magic.
Adam Thielen continues. The great catch here, reaching over P.J. Williams to secure the ball.
You know what? P.J. Williams is trying to get in phase. He's pass interfering. Adam Thielen has done some things this year that I think we've kind of just glossed over. He's been amazing.
A.J. Green, same thing, keeps his eye on the ball, reels it in, despite Carlton Davis all in his face.
It's not hard enough in this league to play defensive back with the rules being what they are, no less against some of these guys who are as talented as they are.
Look at that. There's just really not much you can do.
I feel like we don't give A.J. Green the credit he actually deserves.
Well,
you're right.
we're starting to give this guy credit, at least for finding the fountain of youth. Need I say more? That was the nightcap, I think, right? That's 64 yards all the way.
You know what's sad? I legit thought his hamstring was going to pull, though.
I was going to say.
You worried, did you?
I pulled mine watching it.
Nope, he's all good.
I knew I can't run that far. I can't jog that far. He's bigger now.
Yeah.
He swole up, bro.
This is an unbelievable catch.
How about this first NFL score?
Mo Alley Cox.
Andrew Cox outstretched and reels it in.
I don't know. I mean, being honest, I don't know what you do with guys this big. Like when we talk about the rules, like he's just too big.
As if it wasn't hard enough to play football already. Like these basketball guys.
This is him, by the way, dunking at VCU. So he's got the hops. Seahawks go all out on this celebration.
This is pretty good.
Tyler Lockett and Doug Baldwin. Honor of the World Series, perhaps. Playing a little baseball. The knockout punch.
I wonder when you work on those. Is that a Tuesday thing?
You tell me. Not an off day thing. Adam Vinatieri, welcome as the NFL's all-time points leader. Getting it done.
Biggest kick ever against the Raiders for him?
Yeah, absolutely.
In his career.
He's made a lot of people money, too, man.
You know what? It's actually fitting that he should set the record against the team that he had the greatest kick in NFL history against. I hadn't even thought of that until the great Tim Hasselbeck.
I
do nothing without Tim.
You know what? Schefter's always slow to the info.
Always a little
late. It has been a busy Monday. We have seen the first head coach removed. Cleveland has fired head coach Hugh Jackson. He went 3-40 during his tenure as their head coach. It wasn't the only change, though. Cleveland also fired its offensive coordinator, Todd Haley. He was in his first year in that role with the Cleveland Browns. Also today, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have made a decision, and that's still Hugh Jackson, but I can tell you that Dirk Cutter will turn to Ryan Fitzpatrick, who he turned to on Sunday. But first, let's simply more reaction on the Browns' decision. I don't think it's a huge surprise, Adam. Perhaps the only surprise that it happened now and at the end of last season.
Well, there was some talk about doing it at the end of the last year, and I think that Jimmy and Dee Haslam, who will talk at about 4:30 Eastern today and address the Cleveland media, they'll share some of their thoughts at that point in time. But there were some people who thought they would do it then. They decided not to, and so they matched their new front office